All right, everyone. I believe we are live now. Yep, we're live. We're live with Ian. He's up in New Hampshire and he's with a group called the Crypto Six, and we're going to be chatting about their, uh, I should say, pleasant interactions with the government in their trying to exercise their monetary freedom. But anyways, Ian, go ahead and introduce yourself and introduce any other thing you've got going on in case people want to look for you after this.
Sure. I'm Ian Freeman. I primarily am the host of a nationally syndicated talk radio program on about 190 radio stations called Free Talk Live. The show is, of course, available online in live streaming and podcast downloadable form at freetalklive.com. I'm also a big advocate for cryptocurrency and freedom and liberty. I'm an activist here in New Hampshire who migrated here as part of the New Hampshire freedom migration, where thousands of libertarians and voluntarists and the liberty-loving anarchists are coming from all around the country and the planet to focus their efforts in one place. And so part of my activism here on behalf of my church, the Shire Free Church, is to get the word out about peace. And I think cryptocurrency is a important tool towards that end because every dollar that we can get out of the system and turned into cryptocurrency or gold and silver to a lesser extent, but anything that we can get out of the system and into these alternatives protects the value of the individual, and every dollar less is one fewer dollars that they have to spend on doing things like bombing peaceful people and going to war. So to me, it's cryptocurrency is good for so many different reasons, but the number one is that it empowers the individual and puts them in control of their own finances for the very first time ever. Because then you're not subject to the ravages of ongoing and increasing inflation that the federal government gang is constantly cranking out. So it turns out they don't like it when you do things without their permission. And they raided my home back in March of last year, and they raided at the same time I think 4 other of my friends' homes at 6 a.m. on a 10-degree morning in the middle of winter, and they charged us with a bunch of BS. And now we're going to court, and it's not going to happen probably till as early as November. So it's a bit of an awful situation, but that's what happens when you actually do activism for freedom. They come after you.
And can you describe to our audience what a raid looks like, and describe it like Hemingway or something? Because I'm definitely interested.
Describe it like Hemingway.
I'm interested in knowing how that works.
Okay,
what is a raid?
Do you have any good scotch with you first before you try to embark on the Hemingway description?
I don't know what Hemingway writes like, so I'm probably going to fail at that particular request. But and I don't drink either anymore, so sorry.
Congratulations.
I don't drink any less either.
Yeah. What happened was we were woken, Bonnie and I, to the sound of just breaking glass, just crashing noises coming from downstairs in our house at about 6 a.m. That morning. And at first I had thought that maybe some kid had, thrown a brick through the front window or something like that. And then as I was kind of becoming conscious, I heard another loud crash coming from downstairs. Okay, well, this sounds pretty serious now. So we kind of made our way out towards the foyer here, and I heard a very loud whirring noise, very, very loud, like not quite chainsaw loud, but pretty loud. And it turns out they had flown a drone inside through the broken windows here because they were, too afraid to come in. They're worried we're gonna, I don't know, do something violent, I guess is what their concern was.
You look like such an extremist.
Yeah. And so they flew a drone in. We came downstairs. They've got guns pointed on us. There were probably 24 various different members of federal agencies, from the FBI to the IRS to the ATF to the Postal Service. Local cops were on scene backing them up. And then ultimately since they busted in the windows, there was broken glass all over the floor. And of course we're barefoot. And they, wanted us to come downstairs and open the door and come outside. I said, well, if there's glass all over the place, They want me to put the dog down, and I didn't want to do that. Didn't want them stepping on the glass, so they let us carry the dog down to, and then ultimately get our shoes, take the glass out of the shoes, put our feet in the shoes, and then go outside, where they then instructed me to put the dog down. And so I said, well, is anyone going to take the dog and put him somewhere? Because, it's 6 a.m. and he's just going to run around. And they didn't care. So they just let him run around in the streets for, I don't know, a half an hour or something like that. Luckily, he didn't get hit by anything. And finally, some agent that had some sort of shred of humanity left did take the dog and put him in one of their trucks or whatever. Everybody in the house was handcuffed. They came in, searched the whole place, and then ultimately I was carted off to jail. At the same time, this is a duplex here where I'm sitting. So the other side, where my friend Nobody and co-defendant Nobody was living, was also raided. So the same thing happened there. They busted in the windows all at the same time. And, all of this is over Bitcoin related stuff. They've charged us with various different so-called victimless crimes, like money transmission, conspiracy to transmit money without a license. There's multiple quote-unquote wire fraud charges. There's for me, I got the what they call the kingpin charge, which is what they call continuing financial crimes enterprise. That one's got a 10-year minimum sentence on it. And money laundering was another one that I got that no one else did. So yeah, they're looking at putting me in prison for the rest of my life.
All right.
Wow.
I do want to follow more with, I want to kick off in a minute, talking more about, this is your government folks who came in, did a no-knock search warrant for financial crimes, which to me is just a terror tactic. I don't care what anyone says. That's all it is.
Sure.
I think the proper wording for that would be dog crap. And I'm a firm believer that if we don't start tearing down these government agencies, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where one day we're all subject to them. But tell us what the preceding stuff was. What was it that you did to bring the ire of the truthful and honest FBI, who has never had anyone investigating a so-called kidnapping hauled away for beating their wife because their wife didn't want to do something in a weird swingers club or whatever, and the Secret Service and the IRS, of course, which everyone's got to love right now. What was it that drew their ire?
Well, if you believe what they say we sold Bitcoin without asking their permission. And that's what the money transmission charges are. They wanted us to get some sort of permission slip, some kind of government paperwork. They'll say that we were allegedly taking advantage of elderly women online, or allowing criminals to take advantage of them because we didn't have government paperwork. And they'll say that we sold Bitcoin, or that I sold Bitcoin through some crypto vending machines to an undercover agent posing as a heroin dealer, which is false. I specifically told him that I wouldn't sell to it.
So hold on, let's go back to that. So
Yeah.
An undercover agent came to you saying, hey, I deal heroin, I want to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, he had actually bought Bitcoin previous to revealing that he was a heroin dealer, and then he mentioned he was at one of our Bitcoin, or one of our hangouts here in Keene, and he just happened to drop the information into a conversation with someone that he was a heroin and ecstasy dealer. And after that, when he came back to me to ask to buy more Bitcoin, I told him no. Because I found out what he did, because that would be the definition of money laundering if I were to have agreed to that.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, he went to a local Bitcoin vending machine that my church runs, or ran. The federal government stole those during the raids. But then he bought some Bitcoin from the machine, which I'm not sure how they expect me to stop that from happening. And they're charging me for money laundering because of that. That's what I can tell so far from what we've seen in the case. There. And then let's see, what was the other charge? Wire fraud is where they say you told a lie to a bank. So they're alleging that we lied over a phone line or over an email to a bank, in my case, more than one. And of course, our viewpoint is we weren't lying. They're saying that calling cryptocurrency rare coins, like if a bank asks you, what's this deposit for? Or what's this wire transfer for? We would say something like rare coins. And that's true. Bitcoin is very rare. There are only going to be 21 million of them in existence. So that's going to be a he said, she said kind of a charge.
It's going to be a semantic argument according to whether you get a really old judge or a judge that.
Well, it's going to be a jury. It's going to be a jury in this particular case.
A jury, but the judge is going to be what allows that in or not.
Yeah, well, that's true. And federal courts are known for being very restrictive on what you can and can't say as far as defending yourself. So we can't, for instance, talk about jury nullification in a federal court, whereas we could.
Your lawyer will get disbarred if he mentions that.
Probably.
That doesn't mean people
you
can't.
You can do it in New Hampshire state courts. You can talk about jury nullification.
That also doesn't mean people can't stand out in front of the courthouse with signs that say, "Hey, ask me about jury nullification."
That's a good idea.
True.
I mean, if someone had a sign.
Yeah, signs are cheap. I wish I was
have those
back east. What federal? Yeah, and that's the thing. Put up a picture of Thomas Jefferson on it. Draw people in with the historical heroes. So.
But the speculative answer to your question, so I just gave you what they say, right? Like that's, if you read the federal indictment, that's what it would sound like. That's how they try to paint us to be, some sort of fraudsters or bad guys or whatever. And, we never engaged in fraud. And they're not alleging that we did any real fraud. They're just saying wire fraud, which is, again, telling a lie allegedly to a bank. There's no victims in this case. There's no one who is alleging that we wronged them or harmed them or anything like that.
Well, there's the amorphous little old ladies that you robbed.
Except we didn't.
They're saying. They're saying you robbed.
What they're alleging that by being willing to sell Bitcoin to someone, that essentially that enabled some sort of internet criminals who we do not know who they are to take advantage of these folks. So somebody somewhere at some point was contacted by a scam artist on the internet and told various different stories. There's a ton of these different things that go on out there. So like there's things called romance scams where they pretend to be in love with the older person. There's also scams where they will pretend to actually be federal agents and like call up and pretend to be the IRS and say, we're going to come after your husband unless you pay us Bitcoin or unless you go and you get us prepaid credit cards and things like that. And so because somebody out there fell for a scam and then might have used one of our services to purchase Bitcoin, they're saying that, oh, well, none of that would have happened if you just filled out some government paperwork. And of course, that's ridiculous. These scams happen day in, day out with various different regulated services. So all that aside, speculative answer to the question, the larger answer is we've been under investigation by the FBI, we being the liberty activist community here in New Hampshire from as early as 2005. And the very same agent who is investigating us in 2005 is the head agent of the case against the Crypto 6. His name is Phil Christiana, and he's also the agent who arrested my co-defendant Nobody back when he was, that's his legal name, by the way, used to be known as Rich Paul.
Yeah, he's changed his name to Nobody.
Yeah, when he ran for governor in 2020. So he was arrested by Phil Christiana, or at the behest of Phil Christiana, back in 2012 for selling weed here in Keene, New Hampshire, and offered an opportunity to get out of the charges if he would wear a wire into the Keene Activist Center. He refused to do that. And so they went ahead with the prosecution. He spent a year in jail after he was convicted in that particular case. So this Christiana character has been sniffing around and looking desperately to find something to charge people with here in Keene. And that's because we're libertarian activists who are effective. We're making an impact. The Free State Project and the Liberty migration here to New Hampshire is something that definitely has the federal government's attention. and they are doing whatever they can to infiltrate and to learn about and to bring criminal charges against as many of us as possible. And so Keene, New Hampshire is one of the more visible areas of New Hampshire. People are moving all across New Hampshire, but Keene tends to have some of the more noteworthy activism. We've made more press headlines over the last couple of decades than anywhere else. So it would make sense that the FBI spends more time on us.
Do you think that this individual trying to push this case has a really I don't know, does like good intentions for what he does? Do you think he really believes that you guys are a hostile actor against freedom and democracy or something like that?
Oh, I think he recognizes that he's got to do his best to make sure freedom and, well, I don't want to say democracy because that's a dog shit, but he's trying to stop freedom, and he recognizes that I mean, especially the IRS, they've got to recognize that their legitimacy is broken the minute that people start handling their own currency.
Right, but I'm saying, do you think, like, in his soul, do you think he's feeling like the good guy? Or does he know he's being an evil, scrupulous tyrant and just doing it anyway?
I think most people in the government gang probably believe they're good people. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't do what they're doing unless they're straight up psychopaths. And some of them probably are, but I don't know Phil Christiana. I don't think I've ever had an interaction with him over the years. I've seen him. I was in the court recording video while he testified on Rich Paul's weed trial and basically perjured himself in that testimony. But is he doing that because he's evil or he wants to protect his organization that he believes is doing good work? It's hard to really say, without knowing him personally. I tend to ascribe that most of the government people think they're doing the right thing, and they're not.
No. Yeah, they are definitely not. So you guys, if they're coming after you saying you committed wire fraud, what would be the difference between what you do and people who sell silver online? Or if you really want to get into it, what about the iTunes cards that is most commonly used in stripping elderly old ladies of their wealth by online scammers? How can they come after one, but the other is going to be ignored and justified?
Well, the other people, the prepaid visas, the iTunes, you fill in the blank, those things, they all are being sold by, quote unquote, money transmitters. And so those people have their government paperwork filled out. So it's totally fine if elderly people go there and get scammed. But if some victim comes to someone who is a little bit more protective of their privacy, then all of a sudden we get blamed for it. And you're right, it's super easy. I did test this out. I went to CVS or Walmart or something and got one of those prepaid Visa cards, and just to see how easy it was. And on the checkout, the automated checkout thing literally asks something about, there's like a little pop-up that says fraud warning, press yes to bypass, and then you check out and you're done. So, yeah. And we were doing a know your customer process just for our own safety. And we were at one point asking some detailed questions of many of these people, a lot more questions than they would have gotten, and a lot more process than they would get when they would have to go through, buying one of these gift cards from a local retailer. So our process was more rigorous in a lot of cases, but none of that matters. They're gonna make the argument they're gonna make, and they want to put us, behind bars for this. But yeah, you're right. They're not prosecuting the Target or the Walmart managers or the people who run Green Dot Bank or whatever, these companies that are selling these prepaid cards. And you're absolutely right. Every day people get scammed, and they're still getting scammed from wire transfers as well. If you go in, an elderly person goes in to send a wire transfer at the bank will say, do you know this person that you're sending the the wire transfer to. But they can't ask too many questions or get in the way too much, because ultimately they have to do what their customer wants them to do. And so if the old lady tells the bank, yes, I know he's my husband or whatever, then they'll begrudgingly move forward, even though they might know or believe that elderly person is being taken advantage of. But they've got their paperwork filed with the government, so it's okay. They won't be prosecuted.
Yeah, I think it's simply because the higher ups recognize that cryptocurrency is a huge threat to their monopoly.
Have you asked if you could fill out the paperwork right now?
Oh, I'm not interested in that. It's not my belief that we are obligated to have their paperwork, because we have an attorney, his name's Seth Hipple. He wrote up a 4-page legal opinion about this back in 2017 at my behest. I said, hey, can you do this research? People are saying, you need to have this paperwork, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, according to my reading of their own codes, I don't think that that's true. And so, he agreed, and he took a look at it, and it's pretty clear that there is no obligation on our part to do anything like this, because ultimately, and this is going to be another thing that's going to have to be hashed out in court, Bitcoin isn't money, and at least by their definitions. And even if it was money, we weren't transmitting it, quote unquote. So all of these are legal terms that have very specific definitions. And so, if you go up and pull up, what are some of the elements that make something money? Bitcoin doesn't meet all of those different elements. For instance, it's not, its value changes, right? So you don't really know one day to the next what the price is going to be. It doesn't have that stability that you kind of expect. Even though we all know the dollar loses value over time, people at least perceive it to be stable. Bitcoin doesn't have that perception. And there's some other examples of that. But even if it was to be found as money, it's still not transmission, because transmission generally has to do with where if you go to, say, MoneyGram or Western Union, and you say, I want to send $100 to my friend in Florida, then they take your money from you, they take a fee, and then they make that money available for your friend to pick up down in Florida. So you've gone into a 3-way transaction. That's generally considered money transmission. There is another alternative to that where you can transmit to yourself, but in another location. And again, that's also not what Bitcoin is, because it's all on a ledger. So the Bitcoin never actually really moves. So they're going to have a real tough time arguing that this was money transmission. And interestingly, in all the previous cases where they've done similar things, because we're not the first, the Crypto 6 isn't the first case of someone who has sold Bitcoin being prosecuted by the federal government. But in the other cases, all of them took a plea deal. So we've never actually seen someone go to court and make any of the arguments that we are intending, to talk about.
What kind of plea deals do they usually end up with?
Offhand, I can't think specifically, but usually up to several years in prison.
That doesn't sound like a deal.
Well, when you're looking at 30, it might.
It does. Let's remember where Ross Albright is. Albright?
Yes.
Ross
Ulbricht.
Mm-hmm. He got railroaded, and then all the guys that investigated him ended up in jail as well. It reminds me a lot. I keep going back to this Whitmer kidnapping case. This is a call out to my conservative friends. It's time for you to
man up,
to wake up and smell the coffee. The left has been saying forever. Now, granted, now the FBI is the darling of the left, but they were saying forever up until Trump that our law enforcement agencies are corrupt and we need to figure this out. And when you see a kidnapping case, and as of last month, it was 18 people, 12 of them were feds. And from what I heard, they just dug in a little more, and now of 18 people, I think 14 of them are feds.
Jeez.
So that leaves you 4 people. and none of the originals are there. The feds paid for everything, drove them, and everyone that started the group left. And it's the same situation with you. The feds are showing themselves to be dishonest actors, and it's time. I mean, we should have any jot down history, and you see it that they're out to protect a big club, and you regular people aren't a member of that club.
That's right.
And that's it.
Yeah. In the end, it's about control. They want to, make sure their sheep stay in their little pen, and they'll let them freely roam around and graze. But the next step is always going to be the chicken nugget machine.
Yeah. Now, don't quote me on that 14 now. I just heard somewhere in passing. Haven't researched.
Possible, whatever it is.
But 12 is the number that was confirmed as of a month ago. It's insane. It's,
I believe it. Well, it's true with every quote-unquote terror investigation, too, right? Not just the Michigan thing, but they've had over 200. And this was the last time I saw the number 200 was like half a decade ago. So it's probably, 250 or something by now. But every time they bust a quote-unquote terrorist who was about to set a bomb off, same exact story. It was the federal government, undercovers who found the dupe, talked him up, talked him into it, provided the fake bomb, provided the van to drive, provided the hotel room.
Not the fake bomb. Let's remember the 91 World Trade Center bombing. The bomb was made by the FBI. And the guy who makes it, who was an FBI informant bomb maker, said, I can make a fake one. And the FBI said, no, we want it real. They go and find a guy with low IQ, get him fired up, get him riled up, and then they provide him with the weapon system to commit his acts. And as far as I'm concerned, the FBI needs to be torn down brick by brick just for that. People were harmed. I think 11 people were killed in the 91 bombing.
And that was an FBI-created bomb? Is what
the guy who made the bomb begged him to let him make a fake one. And when they said no and got after him, he recorded their conversations from then on out. You can go listen to the conversations he had with the FBI.
Wow. Well, one interesting thing we learned from Phil Christiana, the head agent up here running the case against the Crypto 6, when he testified under oath at the cannabis trial for my friend Rich Paul, he actually admitted that it is FBI policy to not record their interviews, which was very interesting. You would think that you would want to record an interview with a suspect or someone that you just arrested, but no, they actually have a policy against it. And obviously the reason for that is because they want to be able to just make shit up. They want to be able to say you said something that you didn't say, and then it's your word versus their word. And of course, who's the judge and the jury going to believe? They're going to believe the FBI. So just absolutely shocking levels of dishonesty within that organization.
Yeah, it is when you look behind the curtain, it mortifies you that it mortifies me that at one point in time I was that little conservative cheerleader, It mortifies me, and I'm like, I can't believe it, and all of it. I'm now on the boat that there should be no federal law enforcement. Period. It should all be handled.
Why would we need that? I mean, like all crime is local. So
there you go.
If somebody commits a murder or a rape or an arson, then let's have the local cops look into that.
Not just that, but also local police. If they screw up, they're kind of stuck there and have to chew on the bite they took. But the feds, when they screw up, they just pop smoke, go back to DC, go back to Virginia, and run away from it. And then there's no real justice to be found in a situation like that.
Yeah, barring the complete meltdown of the federal government, which may happen, at some point in our lifetimes.
I don't know. I think we got a bulwark for president now. I think we're safe.
Barring any kind of meltdown, then the best way I think forward is to get out, and that's why in New Hampshire we've got a burgeoning independence movement here, and we have a ballot measure that probably isn't going to make it to the ballot, but it's the first time we've proposed it, that 7 state representatives put forward a constitutional amendment to peacefully exit the United States. But it would go, if it's passed by the House and the Senate with over 60%, it then goes to the ballot, and it has to be passed with 2/3 of the vote. So it's got a high bar to get through, but we are the first state in 100+ years to have any kind of even discussion about this particular issue. So I think that's the best way forward. Is we can't change the federal government. There's no one who's going to be elected to Washington, D.C. who's going to get elected by saying, let's abolish the FBI. I mean, those things just aren't going to happen at the federal level. So the best way is to just get out of this arrangement. It's been an abject failure. We don't want to live with people who want to be in places like California or New York. We're not those people. And I'm sure you guys can agree there in Utah as well, right? Like, we can't get along. So let's just stop trying.
It's time for a national divorce.
Especially those New Yorkers.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, Dave's from the foreign country of New York, but
You got out though, so
I was from upstate. I'm telling you, it doesn't count the same.
he was from the hostages of New York.
It literally, absolutely.
Yeah, it
that's
is
a good way to
but
put it.
no, I agree with you. It's time for a national divorce. And you know what? We can even go as far as to say we're going to stay a nation. We're going to roll back, but the 10th Amendment has to stand strong. And that's where, if you want it added into this Constitution, we have to have your laws have to be constitutional amendments. But there's nowhere in the Constitution that says we're going to have an armed federal authority. They're gone. They can be absorbed by the states that want to hire them, maybe do some retraining and teach them ethics, or maybe be like New York and bring them on and have them teach your cops how to be even more corrupt. But, I think that we need to revert back to that. We need the 10th Amendment if you want to keep the nation. If not, we need to have a divorce.
Or at least let state authorities outrank the federal authorities when they come into position.
Do away with federal authorities. Do away with them.
that'd be nice.
Because
What a nice fantasy.
I know. These are the things at night that I wake up and I have to change my sheets thinking about. But it's serious.
That's one reason why so many liberty-minded folks are converging here in New Hampshire. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people coming from places like upstate New York and Massachusetts, and even as far away as California. We've had people move here from Russia. I mean, there's people from all around the planet who realize that, we're not getting anywhere being all spread thin all around different places. There's only a handful of real people who understand what freedom means. And so we have to converge our efforts in one place. And the Free State Project chose New Hampshire back in 2003. And ever since then, there have been people moving here. And really, the numbers have picked up in just the last 2 years due to the COVID crackdowns around the United States. People have finally been waking up and realizing that the same old tactics of running a libertarian candidate for governor or state rep or whatever where they live and failing just miserably is not going to it's never worked, and it's not going to work. And so why not go to where there's more freedom loving people per capita than anywhere on the planet? And that's New Hampshire. I mean, before we moved here, it was the live free or die state. So the people that with the natives here, they sort of have inside of them that live free or die mentality and that freedom spirit. And that's one of the reasons why it was chosen as the destination. Of course, it doesn't hurt that there's no income tax, no sales tax, and there are 400 state representatives that make $100 a year. So it's a very, very accessible political system, which is why there was even a hearing on the independence bill that I mentioned to you in Texas early in 2021. Somebody put a bill forward there, which would just have been a resolution, completely, pointless resolution, just to make a statement. It wouldn't have actually seceded them. And that didn't even make it into a committee. Like, it just got killed by the powers that be there in Texas. So no one even had a chance to speak on it. Here in New Hampshire, every bill, no matter how wacky, it gets a hearing. There's the opportunity for the people to come in and say their piece about it. So even though, it's unlikely that this bill will pass, it will get a conversation started. It will get some attention to the idea of independence. And like you guys said, the whole Divorce DC thing or national divorce concept is getting out there. And so this is our way of helping get that out there and move that conversation forward.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I really like that. I would like to catch up with you later after that vote hits the floor, and obviously after you get done with your trial, if you can. I know
After we
during
vanquish them.
I hope so. And you know what? If I was closer, I would be one that would stand outside with a sign that said, ask me about jury nullification.
Thank you.
What does jury nullification mean? Because this is one thing. This is to the masses listening, and feel free to use this. Right now, you are being robbed of your wealth. They're robbing you of your wealth with this perpetual vaccine mandate. They're robbing you of your wealth with this inflation. They are robbing the nation of its wealth. And if you can make a stand now to say, I want to see other wealths at least be explored privately, you might be able to retain some. But we keep going down the path we're going. We're all going to be starting fresh while the kleptocrats run off with everything that was valuable in this nation. I mean, the housing market has been flipped over to where the percentage owned by BlackRock and Vanguard is tipping scales into the 28 percentile range. It's insane. Mm-hmm. And that's just the wealthy, or the people that are friendly to the Politburo are robbing you of their wealth because the government allows them to. The government not just allows them, but supports it.
They're part of it. Sure.
Yeah, well, that's what government is all about. It's all about robbing people in order to enrich their friends and punish their enemies. And it doesn't matter if it's the Democrats or the Republicans that are doing it. It's the same playbook. It's just the friends and enemies are a little bit different depending on which side happens to be in charge.
I would say I would say the friends are always the same. The enemies are different.
Yeah.
But say that again slowly. The government historically has always robbed the people. Always.
Sure. That's what they're there for. They're there. They want to pretend like there's something else. They want to pretend like we're the government and that you're part of this. Yeah. You voted for us.
Yeah.
And it's all just a big window dressing on just an extortion scheme.
Yeah, you voted for me. I mean, ignore the fact that the only other guy we allowed on stage is someone that is totally someone that would shock you to even support. But remember, you voted for me. I mean, there's only two of us to vote from. Yeah. I mean, do you want to eat the old ashy dry dog turd on the lawn or the fresh moist one?
That's what it is.
Yeah. There's not an honest and I don't see a change coming in the future unless there's a collapse, which the problem with is after collapses the changes are usually worse.
And I think it's a lot easier to start over fresh on a new sheet of paper than it is to try to correct the volumes of bureaucracy that we currently possess.
Historically speaking, it hasn't been. Historically speaking, you end up with, the Great Terror of France, the French Revolution. You end up with, after, we don't need to go too deep into what happened after Weimar Germany failed. I mean, all those things are apparent. Historically, if you wait till the collapse, you end up with something really horrible. And then you gotta...
Yeah, that's why I hope we can declare peaceful independence sooner rather than later. Get out before that ugly phase really truly begins in earnest.
If you guys, if New Hampshire goes independent, I will be packing everything I own right then.
Yeah, well, what we need you to do is come here and help us go independent. The more people that can get here, the faster these things can occur.
That is true. I've got another argument for you. Let's say this go round, New Hampshire's independence doesn't go through. But let's say next go round, New Hampshire plus two other states not geographically located next to each other, which I think was one of the problems that happened in the mid 1800s that caused a bit of a kerfuffle. and allowed the ability for them to mold a force. But what if you had 3 or 4 states that all kind of signed up, and the states could be different, like California? What if Oregon came out and said, we're going to break in half want to go to Greater Idaho, and half want to stay in, this quasi-fascist communist state that they're building there, whatever it is. I mean, you
Right.
know, but what if you had a couple states jumping on the same bandwagon, spreading it out? And I think that might be a good outcome, because not that I think New Hampshire wouldn't survive it. I've actually done a little bit of studying into it, and I think New Hampshire would survive it. And I think New Hampshire might even get support from other nations. But I would like to see multiple states do it. And
I think so. And I think that if one goes, more will go, because there's so much trepidation. There's so many people who truly believe that the federal government's going to, drop bombs on them if they try to do it, or roll in tanks. And I mean, I understand the fear, but that's just another argument as to why you should leave. I mean, your abuser is telling you he's gonna beat you if you leave, and it's like, okay, well, it's still time to leave. And so if one state, or when one state leaves, others I believe will follow. And it's worth pointing out that New Hampshire was an independent nation when we declared independence from King George for some number of years prior to joining the United States.
wasn't it the last to sign on?
What's that?
New Hampshire was the last to sign the Constitution, wasn't it, or was that Rhode Island?
I'm not sure on that, but regardless, we have been a nation before, so we're just doing this. The idea is, let's go back to that. Let's go back to the president of New Hampshire instead of the governor, which is the way it was.
And is there a way to determine the numbers that you need after this vote if it doesn't successfully go through?
Well, the committee that heard the public yesterday voted this morning, and it did not go well. 21-0 to kill the bill. Even one lady who had pledged on a phone call to one of our friends that she was going to vote for it didn't. So who knows what kind of political threats were being swung around, or whatever nasty stuff went on behind the scenes. But now it will go to the full state house within the next probably a couple weeks, maybe as soon as next week. And it will get a floor discussion, and there will be a roll call vote. So we'll get to find out who supports this. And by the way, the provision would have simply put this question to the ballot. So that's what's really disappointing here, is these state reps are so cowardly. They're not even willing to let the people vote on this. It's not a vote right now as to whether or not they support independence. I think a lot of them think that if they vote for it, that means they support independence. Voting for this amendment just simply means they support allowing the people to speak on the question. And so the fact that they're not willing to even do that is really pathetic. And so when the full House votes, we will have a roll call vote. We'll know who supported this thing and who didn't, and then we can hopefully try to target some of them and get rid of them.
I think we should introduce you to Utah. We had a vote that passed to decriminalize marijuana. How's that been going, Dave? It's been, what, 4 years now? 5 years?
Yeah,
6 years?
Wait, was this on the ballot, you mean?
Yeah, it was on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Passed with, what, 66%? 67%?
It passed with flying colors.
67% passed to decriminalize marijuana. And they drugged their feet for 2 years to get a medical bill pushed through, and they still haven't perfected that.
So basically, they're modifying it.
Yeah, so you think you got it bad. Now, Utah has a lot of positives, but we are as close to a theocratic state as you can be in.
Yeah.
And
I've heard a lot about Utah over the years, but the interesting thing is Utah is an example of why the Free State Project is a good idea. You look at the Mormons and the fact that they moved into Utah as an intentional migration, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Mormons said, all right, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to go over here where no one else wants to live, and we're going to do our thing here. And then there's no doubt about it that they've had an impact that has lasted for generations on state politics there, and continue to. So that's why it's one of the reasons why the founder of the Free State Project, Jason Sorens, he did research on the Mormons moving to Utah. He researched the hippies moving into Vermont in the 1970s, which flipped Vermont basically from a gun-toting red state to a gun-toting blue state. And and so these migrations work. And so he thought, well, let's do this with libertarians. And so New Hampshire was voted out of 10 different states. Unfortunately, Utah was, I don't think, one of the options. But
I think Utah might have been. I know New Mexico was, Arizona.
What's the population out there?
In Utah?
It's like 5 million.
Yeah, like 5 million.
Too high. Every state in the 10 states had to have less than 1.5 million population, because the idea is we know there aren't many libertarians out there, and so we need to have a larger influence per population or per capita. So we wanted to choose a low population state. So
yeah.
Is there
at 1.3 million?
Is there a dormitory option for the younger libertarian types that can't afford real estate?
Well, I mean, there are people who will rent a room for, under market rent to a good activist. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it a dormitory, but there's people that have a spare room, or they've got a multifamily house with, a single occupancy or whatever. If you come out here and you come out for a visit, come to some of the social events, you'll start meeting people, and you can ask around. And there's different online forums and things where people post requests for housing and that sort of thing. So yeah, we have an unbelievable community of freedom lovers. I mean, thousands of people have migrated here in the last couple of decades, and record numbers in just the last year or two. And we expect it's going to continue being record numbers as tyranny continues to rise and people finally figure out that they need to get together, because numbers make a difference. Whether you want to win an election or you want to do mass civil disobedience, you have to have numbers. And libertarians have never had numbers before, but we do here. And as a result, the people who are in power are very, very scared. There's a lot of people who are very concerned with the Free State Project, and they are speaking out. Like, they have meetings about how the Free Staters are so bad and we need to do something about this. And, libertarians, no one talks about them anywhere else, right? Like, they're lucky if they get listed in a newspaper article listing the candidates in an election. But here, we're literally a threat to the status quo, and the people in the status quo, they're not ignoring, the old saying, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. We are in the fight you stage here, very firmly in the fight you stage. They started by, laughing and ignoring years ago, and they can't do that anymore because we've got roughly 40 Free Staters, people who've migrated here in state office, in state rep seats. So we've got about 1/10 of the legislature. And then on top of those 40, there's another, I don't know, maybe another 50 or so that are pretty freedom friendly. I wouldn't go so far as to call them libertarians, but they'll vote with us on most things. Pretty freedom friendly legislators. And so they have this thing called the Liberty Caucus, which is roughly a quarter of the legislature. So the Liberty Caucus will work with the Democrats on, something like drug decriminalization or, police accountability. And they'll work with the Republicans on low taxes and gun rights. And if you want your bill to pass, and it's a close vote between the Republicans and Democrats, most of them, by the way, are elected as Republicans, just for what it's worth. Because
that's just because the Republicans are the party that's not in power right now, and hasn't been in.
They are.
Well, what I mean nationally is the. We go back 20 years, it would be the Democrats was who the Libertarian Party worked with the most.
Most of the 20 years ago, the Libertarian Party was losing just like they are today.
But the Libertarian Party is going to work with the outside party, and the Republicans have been the outside party. Yeah, I mean, the Democrat Party has the media, the colleges, and the bureaucracies. And so an outside third party is going to work with whoever's not on the side of, as you may have heard the word, the cathedral.
In our case, in New Hampshire, like in most states, it's almost impossible for libertarians to get on the ballot without going through a ton of effort. So most of us have just run as either Republicans or Democrats, with the supermajority of them running as Republicans and winning as Republicans, because, most people just do party party ballots, right? They don't know who the fuck they're voting for, so they just check off Republican or check off Democrat or whatever. And so if you run as a Republican in a Republican district, you probably win.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them have been reelected. So the guy that put in the secession bill, Mike Sylvia, he's an A-plus rated Liberty Republican who's, he's actually a voluntarist. And he's on his 5th term. So he's been elected and reelected and reelected. There's a great organization here run by freedom lovers called the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and their website is nhliberty.org. What they do is they actually read all of the, or as many of the, like 800 bills every single year that get put forward. They have volunteers who will read through these bills, people who actually enjoy doing this, read through a government bill and decide whether or not the bill is pro-liberty or anti-liberty, and then give it a rating. And then the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance then prints out a recommendation sheet every single week. They hand that sheet physically as the 400 state reps are coming in to do their session to vote on these bills. They hand them the sheet physically and say, here's what the liberty viewpoint is on all of these. Because they're getting recommendations from their party, but they're also getting the pro-liberty viewpoint on these things. And so they give voting recommendations based on these volunteers that rate the bills. Well, they also rate the legislators. So every year they come out they look at certain bills. They don't look at all 800 because there's just too many. So they pick certain bills that are like key liberty bills. And they say, well, okay, how did these state reps, state senators, there's 24 state senators, 400 state reps. How did they vote on these bills? And they come up with a score. And they rate every single one of these guys and gals on a yearly basis from A+ to F, and then actually below F, there's what they call constitutional threat. And so they come out with like a report card with all of the 400 reps and the 24 state senators. And anyway, Mike Sylvia is like 100% A+ rated Liberty rep. So we've got some real principled people here in the state legislature that libertarians, nationwide, we've got more people elected here in 1 year to state rep than the libertarians have done in 50 years nationwide. And it's all because of concentrating activism in one place. It works.
Yeah. And I think I don't have any delusions about seeing a libertarian president in the near future. But I do think that a ball was dropped last go around by
Joe Jorgensen.
Yeah, by Joe and Spike. We did interview Spike on here, and I really like Spike, and I like he's got some ideas that I think need to be entertained a little deeper. But I think they didn't. I think the Libertarian Party, when they run for president, or even if they're going to run for governor, I think they need to look at it as, we're going to adjust the message. We're going to drive it so that every time someone on one of the, whether it's the, right butt cheek or the left butt cheek, they have to answer a question in mind of freedom, liberty, pursuit of whatever. And I think the libertarians need to continually do that. And they need to not, I think what killed Joe was she jumped on the BLM bandwagon while the BLM were burning cities to the ground. And she should have stayed away from that. She should say, hey, bad things happen to you. I recognize that, but this is wrong because innocent people are being hurt.
You can't do violence and expect me to have a positive
perspective. And that's the whole thing that killed her. I think Spike approached it a little different, but he still argued for it too. But I don't know. I'm excited to see what the Mises Caucus brings to the debate this year.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't care what happens with the National Libertarian Party. It is all a bunch of completely time-wasting drama, in my opinion. Yeah. And I say this, someone who is a formerly life member of the Libertarian Party. I withdrew or resigned my life membership in 2008. That was the year, if you recall, that they nominated Bob Barr as their presidential candidate. Boy, talk about embarrassing. I mean, Jo Jorgensen, she was not the greatest. She's kind of like a milquetoast candidate, but at least she wasn't a former drug warrior in the case of Bob Barr. And so, like, before they did that, it was a waste of time back then. And I understand that's what most libertarians feel. That's all they have, right? Like they is fighting over this completely time-wasting organization. Can you guys hear that construction noise outside? By the way,
A little bit, but it's not bad.
Yeah, you're fine,
Okay.
man.
Yeah, we're good.
We've got worse background noises here.
So the libertarians have no hope, right? So all they can do is they can fight over their own organization, and it's just endless fighting. The Mises Caucus sounds great. I mean, I've heard a little bit about them. I know they're involved here in New Hampshire, and they have taken, from what I understand, over the New Hampshire party, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a good thing.
They didn't take it over. No, you should dig into that. They didn't take over the New Hampshire party. The president of the New Hampshire party stole everything from the party and tried starting her own Liberty Party on the outside of it.
Yeah, I followed some of it.
That was a wild story.
Yeah, I am. I pay a little bit more attention here in New Hampshire. I'm a member of that Libertarian Party. I'm a member of the local party, so I'm not involved with the national party, but I do have some concern with the locals. But if libertarians want to win, they need to move to New Hampshire and stop wasting their time with the national level politics. Because just look at the voting results. I mean, libertarians aren't turning out more people. They're not getting more numbers. No one's getting elected. It's been 50 years. So, they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, we need to try a new approach. And the new approach that is it's not some pie in the sky idea anymore like it was 20 years ago. We've got wins under our belt here. We've got serious success stories, everything from political successes to civil disobedience successes that I've been involved with. I've been arrested multiple times for civil disobedience here in New Hampshire. So we do everything from direct action in the streets to, you mentioned jury nullification. I've stood out in front of the courthouse I stood out in front of that courthouse here in Keene for like a decade until COVID, when they stopped doing jury selections the way they used to. So I mean, we've done all of it, outreach, you name it, and then thousands more people. We need thousands more libertarians here, and we truly can create a libertarian homeland, and that's what New Hampshire is becoming, much to the chagrin of the statists. They hate us. They know that we're a threat. They know we're elected, and they hate that fact. In fact, they hate us so much. Some of them are calling it quits. Some of them are throwing in the towel, and they're going back to Massachusetts, or they're moving to Vermont, or California, or wherever. But they realize that if they want to actually have their statist hellhole, they're not going to get it here, because we've got a good crew of people that's doing the right thing.
What is it exactly that they hate, though? Because you'd think like when you show them what chocolate tastes like, they might like it. But you're saying that they're actually repulsed and they're moving away. What is it that
they
that
want
they
to
don't
control
like?
people? They're all about their statists, right? They believe in the state. They love the government. They want to use the government gang to create their perfect society, whatever that happens to be. And so when they're frustrated, if you go to Concord or is it Salt Lake City that's the capital of Utah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the capital there and you aren't getting your way, and you keep banging your head up against this brick wall because there's too many freedom-loving people that are stopping all of your efforts, at some point you're going to get frustrated. You're going to give up and call it a day, because in New Hampshire you're only getting paid $100 per year as a state rep. There's a small gas stipend on top of that, but I mean, it's basically a volunteer position.
That sounds
These
about the
people
right.
aren't professional legislators.
That's a good
These
wage.
people are, they're average people, right? Like these are, some of them are retired, some of them aren't. Some of them, they've got an actual career and they thought they were going to go and, work for the people or whatever, and then they can't get their agenda through. They're going to say, you know what, screw this. I'll go back to work or go to Massachusetts or something like that. A lot of people believe that we're going to be invaded by statism here, and it seems like the opposite is true. It seems like the more that we can create this freedom society, this bulwark of liberty, that it just frustrates them because they can't get done what they're trying to do. It's like, well, why keep trying when you can just cross the border and you can have gun control? You can have all these different gun government programs. Those exist just over the border.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Utah is very gun friendly.
Sure.
And Salt Lake, to a lesser extent, Provo and Ogden, and maybe a little bit Cedar City and St. George are kind of the strongholds where they like the ultimate control politics, where they want to, you know, the lockdowns essentially only happened in Salt Lake, the mask mandates and all that. And so anywhere where there's a city, you know. So
That's true everywhere.
yeah, tell us about New Hampshire. What's the economy like? We all know it's beautiful. If you haven't seen a picture of New Hampshire, it's got to be one of the prettiest states.
New Hampshire is one of the strongest economies. If you look at, for instance, like unemployment numbers, very, very low in New Hampshire. Despite that, of course, due to this crazy COVID situation, there's tremendous hiring opportunities. Like you can throw a rock in downtown Keene and hit a dozen businesses, all with hiring signs up. So even though there's low unemployment, there's also a lot of jobs here right now. But the economy's, all things considered, pretty strong here because we are relatively free compared to the rest of the country. There's a couple studies that come out on a yearly basis. One of them is called Freedom in the 50 States. And that's done by Cato, the Cato Institute. New Hampshire is number one as far as the Freedom in the 50 States study is concerned. Florida did have that position because they recalibrated how they did the numbers. It was New Hampshire. It was New Hampshire for a couple of years, then Florida because they recalibrated how they did the numbers. And then New Hampshire has taken it back. The people who wrote that study said they expect that Florida will not be able to catch New Hampshire because of some of the things that have happened here in just the last couple of years. One example, of course, is the New Hampshire savings accounts or education savings accounts, which are actually allowing people to, families to get like a check from the government to help them pay for whatever kind of private education they want to do, whether it's a homeschool curriculum or it's sending their kid to a private school. This has become very popular, and it just passed. Just passed within the last year, I think. And so those sorts of changes that we've had some pretty big changes like that happen in just the last year or so. Those weren't factored into the 2021 Freedom in the 50 States numbers. So if you look at their study, that only factors in what happened up through the end of 2019. So whatever happened in 2020 and 2021 doesn't count for the 2021 study. Same thing's true of the Fraser Institute, where they do a economic freedom. So the Cato one that I mentioned, Freedom in the 50 States, looks at both economic and personal freedoms, and they break it down in a bunch of different categories. Fraser just looks at economic freedom. And in economic freedoms, New Hampshire is number one of all of the United States. And this is in their most recent study, and I believe we were number one in their previous one as well. There's also, they do an economic freedom of North America as well. So they actually take all of Canada, Mexico, and the US states and provinces and put them all into one ranking. New Hampshire is number one there as well. So, I mean, there's just no doubt about it from an economic and personal freedom perspective overall. New Hampshire isn't perfect. It's still a state. They still do state things. They still hurt peaceful people. They still arrest people for, drug possession and other, BS, false non-crimes. So we've got our work cut out for us. There's no doubt about it. But as far as it being a place to get a good start, to get a good foothold, to create a burgeoning, successful liberty movement, there's no better place than this. And the reason why New Hampshire won in the choice of the 10 different states that were up for possible Free State Project destinations, New Hampshire won overwhelmingly in that vote. I believe Wyoming was second place, but it was a distant second. New Hampshire won because the people who supported New Hampshire came up with a really awesome list called the 101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire. And they just blew the other states out of the water with this list. The physical list still exists as a PDF file, and there's also a nice little hour-long documentary film that exists. So if somebody wants to go over those, I would recommend taking the time because there's really some very persuasive reasons why New Hampshire was chosen. There's a website, 101reasonsfilm.com, that has the link to the video that you can watch. And again, if you go to the Free State Project's website, they've got the PDF version of it. But I mean, everything from, the economic freedoms and by the way, this list started in 2002. So there's probably way more reasons now. Like, we didn't have marijuana decriminalization until 2017. We didn't have constitutional carry until 2017. New Hampshire was an open carry state without a permit. That was always a thing. But they had a permit for concealed carry until 2017. That was gotten rid of. So you can still get a permit if you want one, like for reciprocation when you're going to other states.
Yeah.
But you can, as long as you're not a felon, you can conceal carry a gun in New Hampshire without permission now. So those are two, biggies that kind of came up within the last several years. I can just go on and on about, how great New Hampshire is.
Those gun laws are big. I mean, when it comes to selling me a state where I would want to live, it's got to have great gun laws.
Yeah.
Oh, don't forget, New Hampshire is the #1 most machine gun possessing state per capita of all the states. You want to talk about important number ones?
Most select, let's say it correctly, most select fire weapon system owning state.
Yeah, so people here, New Hampshire is such an interesting place, from a political perspective. If you just do a cursory glance, there's a lot of people who, whenever like New Hampshire comes up in some sort of online discussion, will say, "Oh, you guys voted for Joe Biden, blah, 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 you're a blue state or whatever." Well, then when you look at like blue and red in New Hampshire, it doesn't really mean what you think it means. So at the same time that the people of New Hampshire voted for Joe Biden and whatever U.S. reps and senators, all of the federal offices were blue in New Hampshire in the last election. But every state office went Republican. The majority of them. So the governors are Republican, the state Senate, the state representatives are majority Republican. So, how does something like that happen? The answer is New Hampshire is actually a plurality of independent voters. So when you look at the rundown of what percentage of voters are Republican versus Democrat versus what they call undeclared. So there's 3 categories here. It's actually the plurality is undeclared. So if you want to win an election in New Hampshire, you got to convince the undeclared voters to vote for you. And so these people are very independent. They're very independent minded, where they literally went down that ballot and they checked off, Democrats for federal and Republicans for state offices, just because.
It might also show that the people, here's one of my points. I want to see in the future, regardless of whatever happens, that of any county, let's say my county here, we're in Tooele, I would like to see, when they did a breakdown of registered voters voting, I would like to see city council get 80% of the vote. Just 80% of the people registered to vote on the city council ballot. The mayor, I would like to see 75%. And then when we get to maybe the county reps, I'd like to see it drop down to 60. And then state reps, we drop down to, 45, 50%. And then when it goes to national, so for your congressman, that drops down to 35, 40%. Your senator drops down to 30%. And then nobody cares about the president.
And that's the exact opposite.
Yeah, well, the reality is the exact opposite, but that may have been a factor as to why maybe.
And that's what I was just wondering. If people who actually pay attention got in and voted in just the state, they only concern themselves with local to state level. And then it was the people who didn't pay attention but had a political bone to pick, voted national, and that's why it went Democrat. But the reason I want to see that happen is I think that would be a giant voice to tell the feds to get out of our lives. Is if nobody cared about what the feds are doing. I know we're running up a little over an hour now. Do you mind if we go through some comments real quick?
Yeah, sure.
All right. We got Tim O'Connor. Tim is there in New York, so he's quite close to you.
Poor bastard.
Poor bastard is right.
Tim,
Hear that, Tim?
Tim ran for New York State last go around, and Tim's a good guy. He actually does a radio show himself. I think it's called the Freedom Variant there in New York. But he says, Jesus, you should have bought a few politicians. And he's probably correct on that. And he says, you're too nice. And then he posted a link to Revolver News, cases of FBI incitement. And we are going to go through that tonight. Okay, so
That's going to be a long list.
yeah, that's just 5 cases. They must have sorted them out. So he says, Ian, what I am hearing is that you will not entertain a plea deal. Am I hearing that correctly? And that's talking about your case.
As of so far, they haven't even bothered to offer one to us yet. I mean, if you go in front of a jury, it's a serious risk. And there's no doubt about that. As somebody who's studied jury nullification and advocated for it for years, I know that most juries won't nullify, even if they're presented with that option. It's not unheard of, and it actually has happened here in New Hampshire. But going in front of a federal jury, especially, is incredibly risky. And so, I mean, it's hard to say that if they were to come with some sort of a sweet deal where they give back the $170,000 that they stole and the, $200,000 worth of gold and silver and all the Bitcoin that they stole, give us a written apology and drop the charges, okay, that's fine. But obviously we do want to win this thing. And so presuming that they don't come with some sort of sweetheart deal that won't involve any more jail time or anyone else losing anything and us getting everything back, presuming they don't do that, then yeah, we're going to go to trial.
Yeah. And you're in a tough space because you're on the front line right now of fighting for financial liberty for everyone,
especially for this industry. I mean, you are the shield wall. This case is going to be a big deal.
We think so, yeah, because like I said, no one has really fought this. There was one guy named Morpheus who did fight his case out in Arizona, and he's a libertarian activist out there. He was arrested for selling Bitcoin on local Bitcoins, charged with the money transmitter thing. But unfortunately, in his case, they had him dead to rights on the money laundering charge that they brought against him, because they did the same thing where they had an FBI agent who was undercover, who'd made a couple of buys without saying anything about what he did. And then he said that he was a heroin dealer. And Morpheus, unfortunately, went ahead with the sale. So, they had him, as stupid as money laundering is, and even though that's total bullshit or whatever, they had him from the perspective of what the money laundering charges require. So he did actually fight that in court, but was convicted in that case. I'm not sure what happened with the money transmitter in that case. I don't know if they dropped that before the trial or what, but I don't think anyone has really ever fought the money transmitter wire fraud stuff. So we have a unique opportunity to do that.
Do you think that's their play? Is that they get someone to come by? So like I say, we can call me Fed Jared, and I show up and I'm like, hey, I want to buy some Bitcoin, and you sell me some Bitcoin, right? Walk away, maybe come up a second time and buy it. And then on the third time, as I'm buying it, I mention that I do overtly criminal acts. Is that their play? Is that how they...
That is absolutely their play. If you look at the history of people who were local Bitcoin sellers who have been charged by the federal government, they do that every single time. And they get them every single time on those money laundering charges. So we knew that we were being investigated. It was not a secret. They actually had contacted my ex-girlfriend at the time, Renee, in 2018, and her then fiance, and they tried to corner them into saying something about me, and they revealed they were investigating us at that point. They didn't charge them at that time. They didn't charge me at that time, and they continued to investigate. I ended up hearing from another client of mine in 2019 that in California that the FBI had sent agents to his door, so I knew that they were continuing the investigation. So, and that actually begs the question of, if they want to make the claim that we are so dangerous and that all these people are getting taken advantage of because of our actions, why didn't they arrest me in 2018 when they already had, whatever evidence they had of quote unquote wire fraud and, unlicensed money transmission and all that? Why, if we were such a danger to society, Why wouldn't they have arrested me in 2019 or 2018? Instead, they waited years till they finally made the arrest in 2021. Why did they do that? Well, one theory of mine is that they wanted to trump up as many charges as they possibly could, including the so-called kingpin charge, which requires what they call continuing financial crimes enterprise. It requires that you go for more than a certain number of years and have more than a certain number of millions of dollars in revenue or whatever. And they didn't have that, I don't think, in 2018. So they just let us continue to operate and continue to, to conduct their investigation. So it really, calls into question their claims of how dangerous all of this really was.
So they just sat on it and kept pulling your theft statements, your tax statements until they saw you had
Apparently, they actually did even more than that. They apparently had an undercover agent somewhere in this neighborhood with a video camera recording our house at all times. And in the discovery, which I've seen very little of so far, they have, and this is just according to my attorney, they have like statements about Freeman exits his house and pets his dog and goes back inside. So they literally were watching us, it sounds like around the clock, taking license plates from everybody that came and went. I mean, this might have been a multi-million-dollar investigation.
I want everyone to reflect on that for a minute. That a guy that it's not like he kidnapped someone.
He was playing with Pokemon cards and Bitcoins, and there we go. We spend millions of dollars.
He was trading collectibles. Let's just call it what it is. That's what Bitcoin is right now. It's a trading collectible.
It's an online product.
It's a trading collectible. It's a real thing. I'm not saying it's not, but in its current state, it's a trading collectible. Like if someone did do the Pokemon card or the
digital Beanie Babies.
Yeah, it's a trading collectible right now. And just like with those carry and gain value. And I saw something on Magic the Gathering cards. It's a game that you and my son play. And those are gaining value. It's the same thing. So for that, they committed someone to sit in your neighborhood and videotape you, possibly videotaping maybe intimate moments or whatever else, and bringing that threat of violence into your neighborhood. And then to top it all off, they do a no-knock search warrant in you said it was like 10 degrees outside.
Yep, it was cold.
At the butt crack of dawn for trading in a collectible. I want it. That's your government, folks.
Yeah. Oh, and for the added insult to injury, they then held me in a jail cell for 69 days. But it wasn't just me. My co-host and co-host of my radio show, Nobody, again changed his name to run for governor, which was a lot of fun.
I love that. Nobody for governor. Man, I would like to see Nobody for dog catcher. If governor falls through, let's start at dog catcher.
Well, nobody should be elected to all government positions.
I concur. I would like to see the whole floor full of just nobody.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun on his campaign. They held him in jail for 6 months.
Wow.
And only let him out. Like, we all have crazy bail conditions, too. So I'm finally on a curfew. I was originally on house arrest for several months where I couldn't leave my house without asking, my probation officer permission to leave, getting, permission in advance. Nobody is allowed to go wherever he wants to, but he's not allowed on the radio. They said that he's too dangerous. The things that he says are too dangerous and someone might commit violence because of what he says on the radio. And so therefore, he's literally been gagged. He cannot do an interview. He could not appear on your show and do an interview on video or audio, and he's not allowed to be on the radio with us. It's just absolutely ridiculous. None of us are allowed to use cryptocurrency. I can't even go downtown Keene, New Hampshire, which is crypto mecca, where we've got multiple businesses that accept crypto.
Well, Dave's just moving tomorrow now. Okay.
If you love crypto, there's no better place to be. I mean, per capita, Keene's got more crypto accepting businesses than most places in the world, certainly the United States. You want to get your car repaired for crypto, you can do that. You want to have a dentist take crypto here, we've got that. We've got a doctor now, a primary care physician that accepts crypto. There's several restaurants that accept cryptocurrency, and we're talking about multiple different cryptos: Bitcoin Cash, Dash. At point of sale. So there's 3 convenience stores, I believe, that are currently accepting cryptocurrency here in Keene. So, yeah, if you actually want to use cryptocurrency, this is the place to do it. In this little town of 23,000 people, how many you got in Tuella there?
30 something.
Yeah, is it 30 something?
Close. We've got 4 crypto vending machines here.
We've got one.
Well, we have a crypto selling gas station.
Oh, well, we got one in the grocery mart too.
Oh yeah. And so we got two crypto, but a lot of people aren't familiar with what it is.
Right.
And most people aren't really familiar with, they're not familiar with the cause of inflation either. They don't understand what's going on. Why is everything so much more expensive? Oh, well, it's because people aren't making it. Well, sure, that plays a little bit, but 33% of the money that was printed since the United States has existed was printed a year and a half ago.
I've heard between 25 and 40%. So whatever it is, it's a lot.
I shot right for the middle. That is insane. In a 3-month period, even on the low ball end, 20% of the money printed in the existence. Now, money is a durable item, and if you go flush with it, it no longer has the value it did.
That's right.
It's just
inflation
simple.
Is it's mischaracterized and mistaught, of course, in government schools, where they teach you that inflation is an increase in prices, which is not true. Price increases are a symptom of inflation. Inflation is an increase in the money supply, and that's what you're saying happened, and it continues to happen.
Yep.
It has happened throughout, the entire history of the dollar ever since they took it off of the gold backing. And then they're just going to keep on cranking away at that printing press. And so therefore the value of the dollar is going to go down. People aren't going to get raises at work as fast to keep up with it. So they'll continue to be behind the ball as far as the cost of living. The cost of living is going to go up. And even if you get a raise here and there, it will never catch up with it. So they just keep on, basically it's them stealing from people, right? So if you have savings in the dollar and they print out a bunch more dollars and give it to their buddies, which is what they do, right? Like when they print the money, it goes to like the military industrial complex or pharmacy or
the source banks. It goes to the source banks first. The source banks get it first, and then they give it to their buddies. And and then they fractional reserve lend it out more, so they then absorb more wealth from all of their customers.
Well, not only that, but when I was in school, I remember specifically the word deflationary was like a boogeyman in the economy class. I mean, they literally went out of their way to tell you how bad deflation could be. Deflation
is scary as well. It also has its own fears with it. It's just to have a steady market or a market. There can be some inflation or deflation as long as it's within that window where your savings still matter. But right now we're inflating at what? The estimate is 15%.
Oh, geez, that much?
And your savings account is going to grade you in at 2.53%?
No, savings accounts are like 0.1%.
Okay. I mean, then that makes them, you go from that 15% inflation means that, let's give them credit. Let's say you got a good savings account and it gives you 5%. That means you only lose 10% every year.
Yeah, you're talking about 1980s, man. I mean, we haven't had a 5% savings account in decades.
Yeah,
they're all over internationally, just not for Americans.
Yeah,
even the U.S. Treasuries are going for a fraction of a percent. They're next to zero as far as the percentage back on those things. So this whole money system is it's really screwed, and cryptocurrency is the best way out. Now, as a as an independent supporter, somebody who understands alternatives to the government money supply, here in New Hampshire, a lot of us used to be gold and silver bucks. We used to trade ounces of silver prior to the advent of cryptocurrency. And when crypto came out, a bunch of us jumped on board that train because it's just so much, it just makes so much more sense.
Well, yeah, you can break it down into smaller fractions. What are you going to do? Go into the gas station and pull out your pocket knife and take a 1-inch sliver of gold and shave it off your bar?
Yeah, that's. I've got something I'll show you. Bonnie's going to run and grab it. That actually does kind of solve the problem for gold, like you're talking about. Actually, it comes from Utah. It's called the gold back. Have you guys heard of this thing yet?
Yeah,
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I'll show it to you here in a moment. She's running up to get it. But yeah, Bitcoin cryptocurrencies are super divisible. They're easy to send. You can send it anywhere across the planet, and most importantly, no one can say you can't do it. And that's one of the most important things about it is it's what they call permissionless, and it's decentralized. So there's no banker who's standing in the way saying, well, the government says we have to ask you all these questions and that we can't send this because you didn't, blah, blah, blah. I mean, anyone who's tried to do a wire transfer or, send these online money systems, it's just such a pain in the ass. Sometimes they literally will tell you no. I've had bank accounts closed because I've sent too many wire transfers, or they didn't like what the reason why I was sending the wire transfers. It's just ridiculous.
and it takes so much time to do a wire transfer.
Oh yeah,
especially to other countries.
Bank, wait around, and then they finally get to you, and then you got to pay $30 or whatever. And so cryptocurrency is the solution, and that comes back to what we were talking about before with the state. They know that it's a threat, and they want to do everything they can to stop it. But I figured I'll show these to you here. These are the gold back. We got the single here, and then this is a 5. These are the New Hampshire gold back, and there's like imagery on there of things that are specific kind of to New Hampshire's history and like animals and various different mountains and things like that. But Utah started this back in 2019, and they I met the guy, the creator, Jeremy Corden, who's the founder of Goldback. He was at the Freedom Fest, which was an event that happened in Vegas for years. And I'd never been to Freedom Fest before. It was my first time there, and I happened to meet this guy. And at the time, the Utah Goldback was still not fully out yet. They'd only had the 1s and the 5s available. There's a whole series. There's 1s, 5s, 10s, 25s, 50s. And what the numbers stand for is the number of 1,000ths of an ounce of gold that are in it. So the 1 is 1/1000th of an ounce. The 5 is 5/1000ths of an ounce, and so on. And this is a relatively new kind of technology.
Is there gold inside of the gold back? That much gold is inside there?
Yes, that is real 24 karat gold. And they're gorgeous, right? Like you can see how
that's way cool.
Yeah, very eye-catching.
Now, the one downside with that is you're carrying around actual wealth with you that scares the shit out of me.
It's not that bad because you're really only talking about a $3 or $4 piece here, right? So you take 1/1000th of an ounce of gold. Right now, gold's around $1,800 dollars an ounce, so it's about $1.8 worth of gold, or nearly $2 worth of gold in this. And then there's the manufacturing process as well that makes it useful, right? Because you were talking about, what do you do? Shave off a piece of?
Well, yeah. When you were talking about how you guys like to store your wealth in gold. The reason I like Bitcoin is because I am not packing wealth with me.
Yeah, that's true.
Even if I forget my phone, I say, hey, can I borrow your computer for a minute? Let me log on to...
Good luck getting 1 million of those through TSA, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and also...
There's no doubt.
Another thing is if the police pull me over and I have a handful of those, they're going to confiscate them.
The FBI took a shit ton of these from me last year. Like 10,000 of them because the New Hampshire one had just come out, and we were going to help distribute them here. So I had a whole bunch of them. So yeah, you're right. For confiscation, potential cryptocurrency is way safer. There's no doubt about that. But the reality is, I think these are really nice compliments.
They are. And we need to spread our currency management out.
Your portfolio.
And here's why. Another downside of gold is it's manipulated, right? The marketplace. Why has gold not gone up dramatically in the last decade, right? When crypto's been shooting up like crazy, gold's just kind of like, eh. And that's because people are manipulating the price of gold by selling gold on paper that doesn't actually exist. And so the bankers and the government connected people have their ways.
The same people, yeah.
But what this is interesting for is to give someone a physical thing that they can use, because when we talk about alternatives to the government money, there's always a long explanation process when it comes to cryptocurrency, right? Like, tell them about decentralization, how you got to get a wallet, not your keys, not your coins. And, there's all this stuff that you got to go through to introduce somebody to crypto. You pull one of these things out and it gets instant attention. And all you have to tell them is it's 1/1000th of an ounce of gold and what it's worth. And then, the conversation's over because most people understand that gold's valuable. So it's a very different kind of piece. It starts that conversation about monetary freedom and it leads into the conversation about inflation without having to go through all the explanation about crypto. Look, some people are old. They're set in their ways. They're not going to want to learn about Bitcoin. They're just not, right? And so this is something that this is a language that they can understand. And in a place where you might not have real good internet access, these are really useful. So there's every year in New Hampshire, there's a summertime festival called the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Yeah, we are familiar with Pork Fest.
Have you been?
I have not been. I do plan on going.
Bucket list item, right?
Yep.
It's last year was the busiest year ever. After a lull in attendance for a few years, last year shot up to be the busiest year ever. It's apparently already 3/4 of the way sold out for this year. So considering it this year, you might want to look sooner rather than later. But it happens in the north of New Hampshire. Internet, cell phone coverage, it's better now than it's ever been. Like you probably will actually have an internet connection, but it's shared with 1,000 people in the park or whatever, 2,000 people. So internet can kind of bog down. Wi-Fi signals are spotty. And so having something you can physically pull out and use to pay, like people who are making your breakfast and your lunch there, goldbacks really were very, very useful in that instance. I actually, 2 years ago when I attended, I couldn't attend last year due to my bail conditions, sadly, but 2 years ago, for the first year that I could bring goldbacks to this event, I lived off of goldbacks. Literally every meal that I ate from the vendors that were there, I paid in goldbacks. So that's one of the things that they've done with the goldback is they made gold useful again. They've actually made it so you can actually pull it out of your wallet and pay for something instead of using nasty cash. And so it gives people a choice. They're fun to tip with too, because again, just starting that conversation.
I'll bet the first one you get, you put in a frame and hang on the wall.
I wouldn't want to bring them into a strip club. They look kind of dangerous for that.
That literally happened though. A guy that runs a local bar that takes cryptocurrency. I was eating there once and I showed him the gold back, and he definitely wanted it. He literally walked over to a frame on the wall, where like a framed photograph, and just slipped them in there. So people love these things. And if you haven't checked them out, you ought to. There's a whole Utah series. They started with Utah. Nevada came after Utah. New Hampshire was the third state. I think they're doing Wyoming, or in the process of releasing Wyoming right now, and then South Dakota. So they've got the lower population states are the ones that they're focusing on right now. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
And I want to ask you a question about. You said the federal government took your Bitcoin, and if you can't answer this, that's fine. But if you can, how does the federal government take your Bitcoin?
They found physical Bitcoins, which are a collector's item here that had not been redeemed. These were things that were made in like 2011. Yeah. They're quite valuable from a collector's standpoint, and they were in a safe with gold and silver. And so they literally physically stole those Bitcoins in that case.
They steal the gold and silver as well?
Yeah, they did. They took everything of any kind of cash value out of this house.
How crazy is that when they want to come after you, they're going to steal from the populace to come after you, and also steal from you so you can't defend yourself?
Yep, that's right.
Welcome to, and then in the end, it's not like you can go to them and say, okay, I want my stuff back now. You win, I want my stuff back. They're going to be like, yeah, not going to happen.
Yeah, you have to fight a separate, generally a battle to try to get your stuff back. And so we are, moving forward on that front. We'll see how successful we are with that, because they're trying to allege that the cash and the gold coins and things that they stole were proceeds of crime. So we have to say, no, they weren't.
Well, you are a kingpin, obviously.
That's what they want you to believe.
You need to get a nice fedora in white and smoke a cigar, if you would.
We basically have to show the court, these bitcoins, these physical bitcoins were actually given to us in 2012, which was long before we were doing crypto vending machines, long before we were, selling things on local bitcoins or whatever. So they have absolutely nothing to do whatsoever. And so if we can make that argument, maybe they'll give them back. But unfortunately, they redeemed them. So for those that aren't familiar, a physical bitcoin it's just a gimmick, basically. There's no such thing as a physical bitcoin, but there's a private key. So bitcoins have public and private keys. Public key is something that you can give out publicly and people can just send you crypto to the public key. The private key gives you control over the account. So if you have the private key, you have the ability to send the Bitcoin. And so the physical Bitcoin is just a collector's item. On the back, there's a hologram that you can remove, like a label, kind of a cover. And then underneath that hologram, there's a code, which is the private key. And you can plug that private key into an online wallet, and it gives you access to that Bitcoin. In our case, we had one of the most rare 100 Bitcoin. So there's single Bitcoin, physical Bitcoins, and then there was a much rarer 100 Bitcoin, physical Bitcoin, and there was one of those in that safe. So they redeemed a 100 Bitcoin and a single Bitcoin. We had one of each. So they took like $5 million worth of Bitcoin in that particular case. And even if they return that to us, presuming we're successful at getting the court to say, oh yeah, this isn't part of the quote unquote crimes. Well, they're only going to be able to send back the actual, the Bitcoin, not the physical collectible. So it was a unique collectible thing that had a value higher than the actual Bitcoin value, because there's only a few of them, right? There's only however many there are. And so some of the physical single Bitcoins, sometimes they sell for 2 times their value on eBay just because of the collectible value. So they ruin the collectible value, because as soon as you remove that hologram, it's one of those tamper evident things. You can't just put that thing back on there and put the Bitcoins back into it. It's fucked. I mean, that thing is gone. So they stole that value, and there's no way they're gonna, they're not gonna pay us for that. So. Yeah,
and then you're gonna have to go and prove you're innocent.
Correct.
Which is, it's dog crap, 100% dog crap across the board.
And we don't get the time back. Even if they drop all the charges tomorrow, I'm not going to get my 69 days that I spent in jail back. My friend Nobody's not going to get his 6 months back.
Yeah, nobody's not going to get 6 months of not being able to produce his radio show, of all of that.
It's definitely a good deterrent for wanting your freedom, to fight for your freedom. If you really want your freedom, you have to make sacrifices. And we are not a free country. I mean, that's a bunch of bullshit. I could have told you that. I could have told you that. I could have told you that day one in the military.
I think it's because people finally recognized.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be you'd hear that from time to time, but no one says it's free.
Sure, we're a little freer than somewhere else, but that doesn't make us free.
Yeah, no, it's not North Korea.
Yeah, it's not. We're not North Korea or Australia, but I mean, right now, if you had to pick North Korea or Australia, you might actually pause for a minute.
Yeah, that's true.
Or maybe even Canada. It might go
Canada or Australia. That would be a tough one.
Oh, that would be the tough one. That's like that's a
Are
big
they rounding
question.
people up in Canada yet? I haven't heard.
I don't know.
So I
You'll never know. It's so cold up there. Who wants to go find out?
I don't know. Trudeau is. I mean, right now Trudeau's on chapter 6 of his father's diary on how to, change an island into a communist empire. I don't know.
Yeah, Cuba's looking better.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this right now. I'm not promising. I am gonna come up to Pork Fest, hopefully this year, but we'll have to see. There's a lot of stuff going on this year. Not to mention, travel in the United States is getting questionable with our dear leader. But I am seriously going to look into New Hampshire. I want to look at what their economy looks like, what their housing market looks like, and that might be something in my future.
Add some numbers to that.
Though I am nervous of I'm nervous of moving east because I am a car guy, and every time I've been east, we like to sit and idle people because their traffic can eat a bag of penises.
Oh, traffic's not bad here. I mean, this
It's
is
not?
a low population place.
Okay.
Rush hour in Keene, New Hampshire is a joke. I mean, it's no big deal at all.
Okay, good. Because I went to Maryland, heinous. Went to Georgia, awful. The Carolinas,
No, if anything,
terrible.
people here are actually too nice. Like they'll let you in to traffic in places where you would never normally get in. Like it can actually be a little annoying at times. Like, no, you go, or if you're trying to cross the street, they'll stop for you. And it's like, no, you can keep going. I'll cross when I want to. People here are very, 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 very nice folks.
good.
And,
That's what it's like here.
Yeah, New Hampshire is. I came from Florida. I moved up here after living 26 years of my life in Florida, being raised there.
We're at in
And
Florida.
Sarasota on the west coast.
Okay,
Nice
I know
spot.
where it's at.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed here real fast was that people are friendlier. They're more likely to look you in the eyes as you're like just crossing the, going past them on the street.
Mhm.
They're more likely to say hello. You're more likely to have someone strike up a conversation, like ask you a question in a grocery store, in a Walmart or something like that. Just just have what do you think about this product or whatever. That just people here tend to be a little friendlier. Obviously the mask bullshit changed that to some extent, but just as a general rule, I think people here are pretty good folks.
How was New Hampshire on the masks?
Well, the answer is it depends. So if you're in a town like Keene, which is one of the liberal strongholds in New Hampshire, then there's a lot more mask compliance here than there is, say,
But compliance doesn't bother me. If people choose to wear a mask, I'm all about it. Hell,
It's mandates.
it's how was the government on masks?
it still bugs. I get where you're coming from. Like, yeah, it's your face. You can put what you want on it, but it's still disappointing to see people making that choice because I still think it is anti-human ultimately.
Well, it didn't work. I mean, all the studies that have come out on it say it. I can't say it didn't work. I'm just going to parrot what the studies say. And
Sure.
that I caught COVID while I wore a mask all the damn time, too. So,
There was in a few towns, Nashua, Keene, Dover, I think, there was a mask mandate, quote unquote, put into place. I never put one on in Keene at any point and never had any issues whatsoever refusing that. Worst case, every now and then somebody might say, like the Hannaford grocery store manager approached Bonnie and I when we went in there once with no masks on and said, you need to put a mask on. And I said, I'm medically exempt, and he went away. So if you knew the magic words, you didn't. There was no pushback or anything like that. The police in Keene actually are not interested in enforcing the mask mandate, and I have that from. There was actually a brief history. Keene put in a mask mandate in August of 2020. We immediately protested it. We had 100 people at one point in Central Square without masks on, and they didn't arrest anybody. Right? They're just not interested in it. This year. So it went away in the summer of 2021, and then just last month they brought it back, except this time they did it differently. The first mask mandate, they would punish the business owner if their customers were unmasked. And to my knowledge, they never actually issued a single fine on that. This time, the mask mandate is against the individual, which is if you're going to have one, is a better way to write it because you don't want to use business owners as the enforcement.
You don't want to co-opt a private business owner as your Gestapo.
Right. So I'm not in favor of either of them, but it's less offensive than the previous one was. And actually, a Keene police officer came out, a lieutenant, spoke out on social media and called out the Keene City Council as basically tyrants and said and called for mass civil disobedience on this issue, which was an amazing thing.
Did he get in trouble?
No, the Keene police chief was interviewed. The local newspaper tried to make him look like a bad guy because that's what the mainstream media does. They take the pro-COVID position, but so they tried to stir up this controversy about what the lieutenant had said. His name is Jason Short, and so they went and they got a comment from the police chief in this case, and the chief, he's a politician, right? So he was careful with what he said. He said, well, we can't tell our officers what to say when they're on their own time, and all of our officers will enforce the Keene mask mandate according to my guidance. And so that begs the question of, well, what is your guidance? And so that was not asked by the mainstream media in this case. And I encountered one of the captains, and I won't say which one it was because it was just a private conversation I had with him, but I saw him at the grocery store just last week. And I asked him, well, did you hear about what Jason Short said? And what'd you think? And he didn't even, he'd kind of heard a rumor, but he didn't really even know anything about it. He's the captain, he's his direct supervising officer. And so I broke it down for him. And he said, yeah, no one in the Keene Police Department wants to enforce the mask mandate. So
That's
it's
awesome.
just not going to, just not going to happen. From the state perspective, the governor went tyrant crazy in 2020 and started, like every governor everywhere, started issuing,
except DeSantis. DeSantis is the dang bulwark.
Yeah, he's still a police status though.
Oh, he is. I'm just saying on the mask mandates, even Abbott lost his mind for a minute. But
DeSantis was good on this one issue.
The only one.
Yeah, he gets way too much credit.
Well,
South Dakota was also pretty good.
Yeah, Kristi Noem.
Yeah.
Kristi Noem. Yeah, she was good. Actually, I'd say, in my opinion, I like Kristi Noem the best because she brought it constitutionally, her argument back. Whereas I don't see in the Constitution where I have this standing to do this, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, it was good for her in that case.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire, Sununu is the guy who's the governor here, and he was pretty disappointing. He's not a libertarian, he's a Republican, but he was pandering to people he wants to be in the federal government. So he's one of these corrupt characters. But interestingly, the way his executive orders were actually written, you could kind of drive a Mack truck through the holes in them. So they had their quote unquote stay at home executive order that happened in 2020, and so when that order came out, we decided we were going to go and throw a party out in Central Square here in downtown Keene, New Hampshire. So the very night that the stay-at-home thing came into place, we were out at midnight at the moment that it went into play, throwing an open container alcohol party in Central Square, and we did that for 36 weeks in a row. This is right in the heart of downtown
God,
Keene.
I love it.
The police are literally driving around, regularly in this particular area. And so we brought back actually something that we did a decade ago. We call it Nightcap, where we would go out with open containers to protest the open container ordinance. And so we actually brought this particular thing back to protest the stay-at-home thing. But in the stay-at-home order, it actually, for people that actually bothered to read it, and your average person doesn't, which is the downside of this. Most people, they just do what the media says, which is disappointing. But in the stay-at-home ordinance, or in the executive order, it basically said that you can still go out as long as it's, and I don't remember the exact wording, but as long as it was essential to your conscience or something like that. So, if you want to go out to a party, if it's essential in your mind, then apparently that was the way out of this. They never prosecuted anyone. No one ever got arrested. Interestingly, they did have, various different executive orders about how businesses were supposed to be run, a bunch of the usual bullshit that you saw in a lot of places. And they did hand out some fines to some businesses. There were about $10,000 in fines that were issued, I think, to 8 businesses in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire was the only state of all 50 states where the state legislature put something into the budget that Sununu was pressured to sign for whatever reason. He signed this budget that undid all of those fines. So the state of New Hampshire had to refund every single one of the fines that they handed out to those businesses. And there were a couple other states that talked about it. I think Alabama was one of them, and there was another where the state legislature talked about it, but it didn't go through. It didn't pass in any of the other states. New Hampshire was the only one where businesses actually got the fine money back. So,
That's awesome.
you know, it wasn't as bad as a lot of the other places. And in the end, it actually ended up being the best because no one actually ended
like
up
that.
paying those funds.
Hey, Ian, let me ask you this. Do you still ever look at the public address to your 100 Bitcoin thing and watch the cops divvy it up amongst themselves as it goes from transaction to transaction?
They've put it into a holding wallet. The FBI presumably has, you know, a wallet in which they dump whatever kind of coins that they have confiscated from people. So it's just sitting in their possession.
Okay, so they didn't take it out and party at the clubs or
There's
use
no
it amongst
evidence
themselves.
of that happening.
Well, that did happen with Albright's.
Right.
That's why a couple of the guys went to jail. But remember, the FBI held on to all those Bitcoin they got from that. And then what was it, 2 years ago, dumped it on the market and caused a catastrophe in the Bitcoin market for like 2 weeks. The largest single Bitcoin, like $43 million in Bitcoin.
Yeah, we covered his case in detail on Free Talk Live, and actually his mom, Lynn Ulbricht, has been on our show multiple times. She, I believe, joined the Free State Project, and Ross has joined the Free State Project as well.
We got to get him out. He's got to get out. That's just.
I hope so. I've signed the petition, freeross.org. Get on over there if you haven't done that yet.
If you sign it 6 or 7 times, does it negate itself? Because I sign it every time I see it.
I don't know, but you know, unfortunately, the only chance for him to get out at this point is to get a presidential commutation or a pardon.
Yeah, and
the odds that that's going to happen from Joe Biden, who's one of the architects of the war on drugs, seems pretty slim.
well, okay, we could do it if we went in there. Let's pretend there's dementia aid coloring books, so we're dementia aid coloring book deliverers. And we could get in there and whisper in his ear and baby talk. One of you guys are going to have to sacrifice to getting sniffed. I'm just going to throw that out there now, but we could make this happen. And you know what? Trump can F right off for not doing it.
Yeah.
Think he'll do it on the second round?
You know what?
I hope so.
I know everyone wants to vote Trump. I know everyone's happy about it, but I don't think we need that in the White House again. There were some things he did that was good for the nation.
Trump's a vaccine pimp. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a recent video where some of the most recent videos going to really be turning off, I think, some of his supporters. He's the vaccines.
It is. He's pro-vaccine because the pandemic was such a nominal thing that was a large reason for the difference in his vote counts and for his loss, regardless of how you believe it. And I don't care. I don't care about him saying get a vaccine, because I'm okay if Trump comes out and says get the vaccine. I think it's good. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with them saying anything. It's when they hoist a law onto you, that's when I start having issues.
Right. But
I don't think we need Trump in there because he is a figure that causes this nominal catastrophe. And just like Biden is a figure that causes an actual catastrophe economically. And I think there needs to be a different way found. And I don't care.
Don't forget the money printing cranked up under Trump, right? He signed a huge $2 trillion.
Yeah, when he did
bill.
the omnibus bill, but he did what every president before him did: double the debt, double the debt, double the debt. He's the exact same. Trump lost me on his comments on the red flag laws, and on his when he said, take the guns now, due process later. That's when he lost me. And I don't want to sound like all I care about is guns, because that's not. But I do care about processes. And I think you cannot have a survivable nation if you're not going to have processes that matter. And when he did that
interview with, I think it was Candace Owens, where she confronted him about Assange and Snowden.
I did not, but I heard.
What did he say? What did he say? I'm curious.
It's incredibly disappointing. To as you might expect, to paraphrase what he said, he said, "Oh, there's good people on both sides," and that was basically it. There's good people on both sides, so he couldn't do anything to offend the good people who want to prosecute Julian Assange and Edward Snowden.
And I mean, he should have came out, Snowden and Assange. He should have came out and said, blanket pardon, go live where you want, do what you want. We're going to leave you alone. He should have released Albright. He should have gone through, and he did do quite a bit for prison reform. He just didn't do enough.
He let some people out.
Well, you can't expect everything from a former Democrat from New York City. But I mean, look, you guys have options when you vote for president.
I would say
you have the communists, and then you have Trump. So guess where I'm probably going to vote.
Well, I haven't voted for president for a number of years, and
he probably won't vote.
What you do.
Yeah, probably not. But I mean, I know. Look, the country's spiraling down the drain, and I want it to go as slow as possible. So,
but he's kind of a collapsitarian candidate. Portland was protesting, and then he got in, and Portland went on fire.
You know, sometimes
so it's also something to look at.
Sometimes things do need to burn down so you can start fresh.
Fire is Portland a great antiseptic. I'm not going to lie. It's a great antiseptic. But I still got to think that there are some people who live in Portland that are not a part of it, that I don't want them to get caught up in it. So yeah, so I'm not a Trump supporter, and I know my father, if he's listening to this right now, just threw his phone across the room. But
you're not a Biden supporter either. In fact, you don't vote for president.
If you're a collapsitarian, Biden is the president for you, because he's being run around by he's not adding he's not adding any voice to the discussion that's trying to salvage anything. He's being run around.
He's just trying to figure out what he's going to eat for dinner, or who's going to change his diapers.
Yeah, that's the question. Do you think he has like a pull-up diaper or the suspender system? You know, the questions the American people deserve to have answered. We need to get Tubin on CNN on this or something. But yeah, we'll let you go here in just a second. We've kept you for 2 hours.
But before we let you go, why don't you tell the audience how they can help fund your lawsuit or assist somehow in some way?
Do you have like you can't have a GoFundMe, obviously, because the only way you can have a GoFundMe is if you're Antifa and you actually harmed somebody physically. But what do you have?
Well, to anyone that wants to help out, I would say the best thing you can do is to just spread the word about the Crypto Six. There's a website that some supporters put up called thecrypto6.com, and it's got some pretty crazy video of the raid actually happening, because again, we're here in New Hampshire where we've got a high concentration of activists. So believe it or not, at 6 a.m, the word went out that the raid was happening. Somebody else, because they stole our phones. We didn't send the news, but somebody somewhere, put the word out that it was happening, and 2 of our friends showed up with a video camera since they were still awake at that time, and they got video footage of Bearcat, this armored personnel carrier with a battering ram busted through the front door. I didn't mention that part. Yeah, that didn't happen on my side of the house. That was the other side of the house. The Bearcat rammed through the front door. So you get a video, actually, not of it happening, but the aftermath, where it's still parked there with the door wide open and the battering ram and the dudes in their, their camouflage running around and all that. And the local Keene police threatening them, pushing them off the property and pushing them back like a block down the street. So there's video of this stuff, which you normally don't get video of these raids because you don't live in a libertarian paradise. Anyway,
what's the thoughts? What does the Keene police think about their actions that night?
Well, curiously, the very same officer who's in favor of mass civil disobedience on masks was the officer who was threatening my friends to push them back down the street. He was in his mindless automaton mode at the time, instead of being a decent human being in that moment. But just to come back to your original question, we're all right as far as funding is concerned. The Shire Free Church is not doing poorly as far as its,
And what's
being able
this
to-
church? Shire Free Church?
The Shire Free Church. It is
Shire.
the church that I helped co-found back in 2012. That owns the building that I'm sitting in, and is ultimately behind a lot of the outreach, the liberty outreach and activism that some of us do here. But so yeah, we've got the lawyers taken care of. I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody no, they can't send something to help, and I think there are some donation options at thecrypto6.com, but I don't really handle that. But the best thing you can do is just spread the word, share this video with your friends, share the crypto6.com. There's a nice little 10-minute piece that the folks over at Ledger Wallet put together. They sent a film crew over from France, and they shot some footage and interviews and stuff, and they put together a really nice 10-minute short documentary about the Crypto6. I believe that is linked over at thecrypto6.com. So there's some nice media that exists already. And if you support cryptocurrency, you can do that. But ultimately, the best thing that you can do is, if you're of a freedom mindset and you love liberty, you should absolutely plan a move to New Hampshire and help us, do whatever it is.
Take
that you
over.
Think needs to be done.
Take over.
Numbers, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whether that's working on gun freedom or drug freedom or secession or whatever it is that you feel called to do, there are other freedom lovers here who are probably already on the ball. And you can likely plug yourself right into whatever already exists. And if whatever you want doesn't exist, you can create it, get the word out about it, and then you'll find other people signing on to help you with the thing that you want to do. Running for office here is super easy. Like I said, there's 400 state reps. I don't know how many you have in Utah, but it's the lower number, whatever it is. And,
I like it.
So each state rep here only represents, quote unquote, we know they can't actually represent people, but 3,000, roughly 3,500 people. So, you run into these people at the grocery store. So it's a very accessible system. We can make a difference here, and that's why we're winning.
I like it. I do have. Does anyone know what LuLaRoe is?
I was just going to ask you.
Here's my hot take. Cryptocurrency is like LuLaRoe for men.
What? Katie, you got to give us a little bit more description.
You have to break it down.
Roe? Is that a man's name?
LuLaRoe.
Bonnie is telling me it's a clothing line.
Oh.
Apparently.
Okay,
Oh.
Cryptocurrency is like leggings for men? Because that's all that popped up was leggings.
It's very fashionable.
I suppose. I mean, there's flowers and a Mickey Mouse.
I don't know
So
why. Oh, she says it's an MLM. She says a multi-level marketing clothing brand, apparently. So that's what
okay.
she's-
Well,
that's what she-
now granted, cryptocurrency could be like multi-level marketing if you want to look at it in a box. But Katie, a lot of people are seeing their savings account actually get smaller when they don't touch it. And another thing to look at is just last year they adjusted the M1 and M2 money markets, so your savings account now counts as spending accounts. It used to be you could only make 6 savings transactions a year, and now they've opened that up. So what they also did, aside from inflating our money, was pull the national private savings and move that into the general money market.
And you know, I don't want to sound sexist or anything, but a lot of when you go to these cryptocurrency things and when you explain cryptocurrency,
Don't you dare say there's women there, because it's like
No,
the
there-
Libertarian Party.
there are a few women there. There's not many.
No, it's
worse than the Libertarian Party. I've been to crypto conferences over the years, and maybe it's been a few years since I've been to one of them, but all the ones I've went to, maybe 95% men, 5% female, and I'm not including the booth babes or whatever that they hire to.
Yeah, that's the majority of the women at the cryptocurrency.
it smells like scrotum sweat and
But I can say this.
sausage.
I can say this for women. I know you probably don't give a crap about economic policy for the majority of you, but men are the same way when it comes to like Gucci and designer clothing. So when you're comparing LuLaRoe to men, we're going to be lost. I mean,
Yeah.
my wife will tell me about these brands of pocketbooks, and I'm just
Of
like,
what?
honey, I don't get it. I don't understand what you're talking about.
Pocketbooks.
But then I'll talk to her about Dogecoin.
Oh.
And then she's just as lost.
Yeah.
Until now, actually, she's starting to understand.
My
it, but-
conversation is generally within firearms, but I do want to go back. Everyone, remember, Ian did committed the crime of having peaceful transactions with peaceful people, and once he found out it wasn't peaceful, he shut that transaction down. And for that, law enforcement came to his house with a Bearcat, which is an armored personnel carrier designed for war zones, and used this. I think they're 62,000 pounds. I think somewhere around there, to ram in his door, to take him and his family out on the street in the cold, to just for the ladies. Just let his dog run around threatening its life. And I have to say, I was afraid your story was going to go to where they actually shot the dog. I mean,
Thankfully, they didn't. I was grateful that they didn't shoot the dog. So,
and
gone that way.
I know we lost some listeners when I mentioned I don't care for Trump, but I don't.
I do. I care for him for you.
Trump showed himself to be spineless. Period.
Gosh, surprise! A politician spineless?
I know.
Man.
And
Yes.
that's how I feel about it.
I think he showed spine in other places. Other places he did lack. But again, he's a Democrat, just a different kind of Democrat.
Well, if someone can actually find me the difference between Republicans and Democrats on the whole, I would like to see that as well.
Oh, I can tell you the difference. Democrats are honest about wanting bigger government.
You know what?
That's a good point.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Damn.
Man, yeah. But anyways, Ian, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for being
Patient with us. 2 hours. He gave us 2 hours of his
we
time.
wiped out 2 hours. But thank you for being a spearhead for liberty on this.
Yeah. Hold the wall, brother. Hold the wall.
That's a big thing. That's
Do our best.
I think
By the way, if your listeners want to check out our show, it starts at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We're on 7 nights a week at freetalklive.com. So if they want to hear more conversations like you guys, every single night of the week, we're here. So happy to, we have open phones so people can call in and talk about whatever they want. We're on, like I said, a bunch of radio stations too. So feel free to join us.
Good. It's going to be, I am going to post in the show notes all the contact information, including your radio show.
Thanks.
So everyone go check it out. I implore you to check it out. And, wish the best from me to nobody. I would really like to see.
I can't. They won't let me talk to him.
Man, can nobody listen to anything? Nobody.
He
If
can listen.
and
not to me.
and stop calling it a he. We're just going to do this generally. Nobody, if you're listening, I wish the best for you, and I understand that it's weird the way they gave you and nobody all these weird contractions on the difference in your paroles. It just I start honestly every time I look at our judicial system, I see it's schizophrenic and evil.
It's scary. Scary. Damn
Yeah.
scary.
We're being punished without ever being convicted. I mean, we're on these
Yeah.
insane restrictions for now. I've been on them for 6 or 7 months, and I've never been convicted of anything. But yet, I've got a probation officer who, and all these things I can't do. It's crazy. Innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I hope the FBI agents listening to this show right now are
Choke on a dick. Oh, sorry. Did I misspeak?
have a little sympathy
No,
for the
have
peasants.
have some integrity.
They'd have to quit their jobs.
Hey, you know what? It's happened before. Have some integrity. If you're not man enough to step up and at least correct and try to uphold that oath you took from where you are, quit your job.
Yeah, because this is clearly a blatant attack on freedom, and don't be on the wrong side of history.
Yeah, yeah, they're going to write about it. They're going to write about it. But hey, and you're welcome back anytime. You've got my email. Anytime. Please keep the channels open because
Communicate with Utah. We are a freedom-loving people, and we want to hear what's going on.
well, we're freedom loving as long as you want to go to church on Sundays. But please keep the communications lines open because it's
New
nice
Hampshire, by the way, is one of the least churched places in the United States. There are fewer people per capita that actually attend church in New Hampshire. That doesn't mean they're not religious.
Yeah.
It just means they're not churched, per se.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm against religion because I'm really not. Closest people to me are all religious, but there is a theocratic element that pops in on a state level when it's all one
I'm
church.
religious too. I'm just not organized religious like, some people.
Well, I'm a minister.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I enjoy my ministry. Also a good band back in the 90s. But also that's before your time, but also I would
Hey, I know what's I'm not that much younger than you.
I would, but yeah, keep the lines open, keep communication open, and if we can ever get a message out to help you out, let us know. And
Thanks, guys.
I like that we're building this across the nation, kind of cabal of buddies to throw ideas and banter back and forth with. I really enjoy the liberty message that we're throwing back and forth because we have a lot of things to learn from you. You could learn something from us, and even Tim in New York. He is, right now he's teaching us how to use special jewelry hammer to chisel through the wall to escape, all that stuff. So yeah, I think.
Luckily, in New York, you can still drive out. They haven't closed the borders yet, so if you need to escape from New York, you can still do it.
Now's the time.
You just gave the new governor an idea. I'm gonna have to delete that part. She's probably right now on calling her lieutenant governor and her state police chief. Hey, can we? Is this possible? Rhode Island showed him it was. But anyways, thanks for coming on, Ian.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
My pleasure.
It's an awesome chat, and you're doing an awesome thing. And thank you for biting the bullet for us.
Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Cheers.
All right, and that's it.